This is a basic strap cutter, and based off of its name, its purpose is pretty self-explanatory, but it is used for cutting straight strips of leather by hand. I've had this one since I first got into leather work. It's just a craft tool brand from Tandy Leather. From what I've noticed, most of them are all built very similar and they function the same way as well. This can be a very handy tool to have in your shop if you are a leather worker. I picked up on a few tips that make using this a little bit easier, and I figured some of you might benefit from those tips, so I wanted to share those with you today. This particular strap cutter is 2 pieces, and when you put it together like so, you'll notice that this one is adjustable up to 4 inches. For this particular video, I'm going to be stripping some belts at 1.5 inches wide. So my first tip is going to cover setting your measurement and holding your measurement. It might not be as crucial on thinner pieces of leather, but as you start moving up into heavier pieces, on these belts for example, I'm going to be cutting them out of some 9/10 ounce veg tan. That leather is going to be a lot more stiff and have a lot more body and structure to it than some thinner pieces of leather. And you might notice that just hand tightening this down on your measurement might not be sufficient to hold that measurement. The last thing you want to do is start stripping some straps, and one end of the strap be the measurement you want. And then as you go along this, slowly start to wave off of that measurement, and the other end be a 1/16 or even an 1/8 of an inch off. It can subtly happen without noticing it. So for me, when I'm cutting, especially like I said, heavier pieces or thicker pieces of leather, I like to get my measurement set, hand tighten it, but then I like to go through and I just keep some pliers or something to give you a little bit extra leverage and cinch that down just a little bit tighter. That's going to help that strap cutter hold that measurement a little bit better as you go along. Another thing to be aware of is that when you are adding that little bit extra, that this can move and kick off of that measurement. So always double check before you make your first cut. Even after you cut one strap, if it's perfect, always double check this again to make sure that it is holding that measurement again. Maybe you might have to go through and readjust it, but going through with some pliers or something, like I said, to just give it a little bit extra will help it hold that measurement a little bit better compared to just hand tightening it. Before you start actually using your strap cutter, you always want to make sure that you're working off of a straight edge with your leather. So on a large hide like this, when I first get it in, I will take this big level that I have, lay it out, draw a straight line, and use that rotary knife to cut a straight edge on my hide. If you're working with small pieces of leather, you can just use a ruler like this, but always make sure that you're working off of a straight edge before you start cutting straps. Now, I don't know who to give proper credit to this next tip, but I've noticed a lot of people doing this recently, and I've been doing it for a while now. It has helped me out tremendously. I used to always struggle with getting this sharp corner caught in the strap cutter on my first initial pull, and it would make it really hard to wiggle out and continue on. A really simple way to combat that is by just cutting a notch off of this corner like this. Cutting that little notch will help that corner slide through a lot easier and not get caught in this little area right here. It makes it a lot easier to get your straps started. It just slides right by just like that, and from here you can continue on. Also, if you're working off of a table like this, you always want to make sure that your overhang is enough to where you're not going to actually bump into the edge of the table underneath. If you were to do that, it can kind of throw this out and make it kind of wavy. So always make sure you have plenty of overhang off your table as well. As you're pulling this strap cutter along, you want to make sure that you're keeping it pressed up against that straight edge the entire time you're pulling along. That way you don't get wavy on your strap. And another thing to help control it is I like to grab this part of the strap that has already been passed through the cutter and hold that while I'm applying pressure, just to keep a little bit more control on that and to make sure I am continuously pulling a straight edge along that. Keeping a sharp blade in this is ideal, but there might be times when you're on your last blade, it's dull, and you don't have any extras laying around. When you're using a dull blade in these, not so much on a thick piece, but on some thinner pieces of leather, the blade might almost start making that leather just kind of fold in on itself like that, not actually cutting it. If that ever happens, what you can do is just come in the measurement you intend on cutting the strap and just use some type of knife to get that initial cut started. That will allow that strap cutter to go through and will let you cut the strap. I hope at least some of that was beneficial to you. If it was, please drop a like on this video. And if you want to see more leather working videos like this, consider subscribing to the channel. If you have any additional tips on these strap cutters or anything else, please drop a comment on that. I'd love to learn. That's going to be all for now. I appreciate you guys. Until next time, we'll see you.